Hi, this is Farook, co-founder of Advisor. I would like to start this conversation by putting forward a question someone asked during the session. It's about why there's a huge boom on the fintech and why there's a huge emphasis on digital payment startups, right? So I want to answer this question on a simple and straightforward way. So 80% of the retail transactions around the globe is still happening on the cash. It's 80% around the globe. Only 15 to 20% of the retail transaction is happening electronically. So by looking at the numbers of the percentage, you can see there's a huge opportunity to tap into, where the opportunity to change or replace the cash and check payment stands at $1 trillion. When you come down to, let's say, GCC, that opportunity starts at $700 billion business as per the latest studies from the Visa, right? So it's really a huge opportunity to tap into, and thus reason you can see a lot of fintech is trying to come onto that space. And this transformation has been speeded up by the recent the COVID issue. So the COVID has speeded up this transformation, and you can see that the cash is really becoming redundant, and people are looking for the solutions, right? They want digital solutions to move forward. Now, this is not something called a developed world or this is a developing world, right? This is called the cash is king. The cash is still king in many parts of the world. So when we come down to Qatar, that opportunity stands at more than 50 to 60 billion dollars. So this is the amount of cash which has been withdrawn from the ATMs in Qatar last year. So why there's a huge demand of cash? And mainly, if you really dig deep into, the main demanders of the cash is the SMEs and micro SMEs, right? So SMEs and micro SMEs still operate on cash. For them, cash is still really a king. One of the main reasons is that the incumbents has not provided them a solution to start with accepting electronic payment. It's not about the technology, it's not about the incumbent banks doesn't want to serve. It's the mentality of the SMEs where they don't really want to have that solution in place to start with. I know that there are at least 2 to 3 reasons why they don't want to have a credit card accepting machines on their shops, right? One of the biggest reasons is definitely the cost of card payment acceptance, the interchange fees. They're not really happy with the percentage. There's a huge pain the SMEs are suffering because when the moment they start accepting electronic payment, they have a huge cost on each transaction, which is 2 to 3% charged by the service provider, which is not really welcome by the SMEs. Second is the settlement time. Most of the banks or most of the providers, they settle the money in a week's time, which is not really good for them, for the business, because the business completely runs on cash. So they have a business today, and tomorrow if they want to buy more merchandise, they have to open the drawer, they have to take the cash, go and get the merchandise, and start the business next day. Because they don't get credit from the suppliers or the manufacturers, right? For them, they get the merchandise through the cash, so they have a huge requirement of the cash on everyday basis to serve the business. Because of these 2 reasons, they have been kept away from the financial inclusions, and which has demanded a lot of cash circulations in Qatar. And this is one of the huge opportunity we are trying to solve as a Spendvisor. And definitely when you talk about financial inclusivity, the SMEs as well as 80% of the consumers are kept out of financial inclusivity, right? And again, this is not something of a developed or a developing world thing. It's really something about the cash. If you really look at the developed Europe, has more than 93 million unbanked people. So unbanked comes from, the root starts from having not even identity or a proper job or a proper income which can be respected by the bank. So 93 million in Europe, which is considered a developed country, is unbanked. So there's the issue of unbanked, there's the issue of SMEs not want to accept this, which has delayed the transformation. And now the mentality is changing, especially by what the COVID phenomena has changed the mentality, and many of them are trying to move on to a digital payment style, right? Another biggest issue of the cash is the cost of moving the cash from one place to another, right? It is said that almost 1.5 to 2% of the GDP is cost on the central bank to deal with the cash. They have a cost on printing, then they have a cost of moving that cash from the central bank to retail side, right? It's a huge cost. And even the banks, they're bleeding on the ATMs. I mean, the reason why they don't charge you any percentage on a withdrawal is because of the rule. In some other countries, if you withdraw cash from the ATMs, they have charged with kind of hefty charges. So the bleed on ATMs, there's a huge cost of moving the cash, there's huge timing. This all cost a huge on the banking as well as the infrastructure. So if you look at that way, government and the banks are also trying to come down on looking at a digital solution to solve this issue as well. Another thing is like cash is not really a friend of poor. It's really a friend of rich. The rich use the cash to invert the taxes, to do business underground. So all the dirty work's really happening on the cash. All the tax information happens on the cash, right? It's not basic. Cash is not a friend of poor. This is really a misconception. The cash is a friend of rich. So you don't buy the guns or the drugs through a credit card. You always do this on a cash. So the underground business, the tax evasion, everything happens through the cash. So there's a huge cost the society is bearing on this cash. And we believe this is the right time we tackle this issue, and we believe it's the right time we introduce product and solutions to the market so the consumers can go out of cash and get onto a digital payment. Now, when we come to the consumer side and how Spendwiser is solving the problem, what I learned that this going and talking or introducing just a platform to the consumer saying that you need to get rid of cash is not really going to work. For the consumers, cash is not a problem, right? It's never been a problem. It's just like no consumers come to us and say that I have too many cash and it's a problem. No, it can be solved in 1 second. Just give me the cash and the problem can be solved. So for the consumers, they don't see cash as a problem because they wake up every morning, they do the jobs, they are running behind the cash. They don't see, yes, there is a little bit inconvenience, but they don't see. So consumers, to convince them that you need to stay away from cash and use a different platform, a lot of value-add services has to be embedded to start with, right? This is where Spendwiser is playing its field. This is where Spendwiser is coming to the market, right? We're just not providing a platform for the consumers to pay and stay away from cash, but it's also a platform where a lot of value-add services has been added where consumer is going to benefit on each transactions, right? So how are we doing this? What we studied that when you look at the ecosystem players of fintech right now, there are mainly 3 players. You have the fintech companies, you have the banks and the MasterCard and Visa rails, and you have the regulators. It's the three players, right? So what we did is we invited another player to the ecosystem, which are the big brands and retailers. When the big brands and retailers come be part of the ecosystem, they come with a huge cushion of CSR and marketing fund, which can be tapped to deliver the cost of financial payment to the SMEs, right? So SMEs is having a technology to accept credit card payments, and all the cost on that can be tapped onto by the huge CSR fund which the big brands brings in. So when we bring in this ecosystem, when we bring another player to the ecosystem, they bring in a lot of value which can be transformed to the consumers as well as SMEs, where you can see a huge cost can be saved. That's what Spendwiser is doing. We are introducing a platform where merchants can start accepting payment as well as use that platform for multiple purposes. They can use it for marketing campaign, they can use it to issue rewards, they can use it for a cashback campaign, and thus get a platform which can be used really to be in touch and up and close with the consumers, right? At the same time, the big brands and the retailers, they get a very good insight on the consumer side. They can spend their marketing fund very efficiently. So all the ecosystem players are happy in this Spendwiser ecosystem what we try to do. the banks and the regulators happy because the entire money movement transaction is happening in the regulated environment. So we are not creating a parallel infrastructure, and we are not asking the consumers to stage the money out of the financial institution to a parallel infrastructure to move on. No, we are not doing that. And it's not, there is no requirement for a parallel infrastructure. We are being within the current infrastructure, tapping onto the infrastructure of the banks and the MasterCard by developing a technology on top of that, serving consumers and being part of it. And also by bringing in another player, we are trying to reduce the cost of delivering the digital payment side as well as incentivize the consumers. So it's the holistic approach Spendwiser is doing, which we believe will be a much more successful for the adoption, because we can introduce any technology, but if you don't have the adoption, it's not going to go anywhere, right? So we believe to have a proper adoption, a right value proposition is must. That's where we have created a platform where consumers can do the shopping, they can earn cashback and point instantly, and they can use the points anywhere they want. So we are democratizing that. As well as the merchants will start accepting the payments on a low cost, and the retail and other banks being the ecosystem are the winners as well. So ecosystem has made everyone happy and a very positive ecosystem, right? This is how Spendwiser is providing value, and we will be in the market soon, and I invite you all to register for early bird access and stay tuned for the Spendwiser app release.